the thing when I look back on all of the lessons from going through years of hearing no, because I created a company called It Cosmetics in my living room, where I started with an idea and close to no money, and I just thought once we created an amazing product that worked, I thought it would just do well, right? And then I started this journey of every beauty retailer saying no, every department store, every QVC, everybody saying no, you're not the right fit. We don't think your positioning is right. We don't think you're right for the beauty industry, all those things.
You know what's interesting? There's a meme online of a kid of a little child learning to walk. And it says something like, when a child is learning to walk, they fall over hundreds of times. And they hit their head and they scrape their knee and they cry and these things. But at no point do they think, maybe this walking thing isn't for me. They don't say, I'm just going to crawl for the next 80 years of my life and just crawl everywhere. They eventually keep getting up and they learn to walk. They balance, they hold on to something, right?
Yeah.
You've got kids, and so you've seen this firsthand. They never stop trying to walk. Why do you think we as adults stop trying to walk into our dreams or into opportunities when we hit ourselves one time, we fall one time? Why do you think we stop when as kids we never did when we were learning to walk?
I think I've never answered this question before, so I'm just going to pour it right out to you, my like how I really feel about that. I think kids have a knowing inside, an instinct. They want to walk, and they just think that they're going to figure it out. They see people around them walking, and they just do it. It's like a knowing, and nothing's telling them not to trust themselves. And I think that as we grow up, I think that everything around us starts to tell us not to trust ourselves. Like self-doubt is so huge. We get and just to use my own example, and some of the stories that I share for the first time ever in the book is like, it's like when you're in the spot of all the experts telling you they don't believe in you, or it could be other people's opinions, right, telling you they don't believe in you. It could be literally no proof of your own dream or idea that it's going to be successful, right? In those first 3 years of this journey of It Cosmetics, there was no proof. It was like no signs, right? Other than women were starting to post their own befores and afters and spread the word online, which was great.
So you were getting some sales.
Yeah, we were doing about 2 to 3 orders a day on our website.
Were you doing were you going and showing it in person at a live events? Were you doing QVC at this point?
No, not. So QVC was our big first yes, and probably the scariest. Probably the biggest life and business decision, lesson I've ever learned was
When did that come? After 3 years?
Yeah, after 3 years,
So the first 3 years, were you going to grocery stores and,
I tried
everything, going to the fairground,
any trade
anything,
show, anything online. We
Farmers
couldn't afford
markets.
to advertise.
Right.
Any different beauty event. I mean, we would. My friends and family would walk into any Ulta or Sephora and be like, and they knew they didn't carry them, but they'd be like, "Can I talk to the manager? Do you carry It Cosmetics?" They're like, "It what?" Like, "Oh, It Cosmetics is so good," and they would try to hustle for us.
It's very Sarah Blakely-esque, where her friends would go and place orders and make it all sell out.
It was that. It was just trying to hustle. And the other thing is all the no's, like every time Sephora or QVC or Ulta would say no, like that was one thing, is that I didn't take it personal, right? That was one, I did a lot of things wrong. That was one thing I did right. And the second they would say no, it hurt, it sucked, obviously. But it's like, okay, I would literally, Lewis, I would decide to believe like it's going to be a yes, and I behaved accordingly. Like I would say, okay, thank you, but one day it will be a yes, and I'm so excited for when that happens. And then what I would do is every time we get like a press placement, or we would be launching a new product or whatever, I would send that buyer who kept saying no, and I'd be like, great news, we just got, in this magazine or whatever, and like one day when your customers get to try this in their store, they're gonna love it. And I think they probably thought I was crazy, but I just decided to believe.
You've got to be relentless in following up too.
Yeah.
You can't just hope that they find out about you. You've got to constantly be following up the way you did, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to look at the magazine and see it. They're not going to see your sales numbers unless you tell them over and over again.
Yeah. And I know you're big on LinkedIn and everything. I would literally scour LinkedIn for any person who worked at Sephora or Ulta or QVC.
Friend them and message them.
Everything, and then try to send them a sample. I mean, it was like everybody. It was. And we couldn't afford to hire anybody, so we got so lean and so scrappy that like in the early years, My middle name's Marie. And so Marie got her own email address. So Marie
Sure.
at cosmetics.com was like head of customer service. And I
Yeah.
would pitch all the Good Morning America. I'd be like, our founder's available for, you know what I mean? It was just like hustling and trying to figure it out. And every time I would check in with my gut, though, no matter how many times I got knocked down, like I still, even though there's no proof around me, I still kept feeling like this was what I was supposed to do. And I made the decision to trust it through those years of no proof around me. And that's the hard thing. And I feel like when you talk about why does a little kid keep trying to walk, but why do most of us just give up? I feel like I feel like so many people either have never heard their own gut or haven't heard it in a long time. And then sometimes we hear it and we don't trust ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And instead of putting our own intuition on a pedestal, we put things like other people's opinions or what our partner's telling us to do or our own self-doubt or what the experts are saying or the lack of proof of success around us. And
How do you think we learn to trust ourselves more?
I think that we have to want to. I think we have to make the decision that we need to want to. And that's hard because you know what? The truth is it's way easier to stay in our comfort zone. It's way easier to make the circle around us happy and comfy and not fearful. It's way easy. And I think that chips away at our soul when we do that. I think every person knows, like I think we know deep down inside if we're created for more and we're supposed to give more, if we have more inside of us to give or to serve or to love or to live. I think we all know that deep down inside. And I think that if we don't do something about it, I think it chips away at our soul. And I think we end up literally talking ourselves out of our own truth and literally never becoming the person we're born to be. I know that sounds dramatic, but I think it's true. And I think that I think that's the easy route. So I think the first thing is you have to want to.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to take a lot of courage to overcome your fears and go into that stuff too. I'm curious, the first time you went on QVC, what was that experience like for you? You felt like you had, a few years of building confidence under your belt, or were you extremely nervous right before that first experience?
Literally everything was on the line in that moment, and that's what made it hard. So you know how you can like know your values and know your why and know all these things, and you think you're gonna like stick by them and live them, and then all of a sudden they're tested. I think like all of us have had that happen to us, and after 3 years of hearing no, we got one shot, we got a yes, and we got one shot on QVC. It's a crazy story. So I go into it in the book on how it happened and how we finally got the yes and all this stuff. But what it meant though is we had one shot in this 10
If it didn't sell, you're never coming back on.
You're never coming back. And it's live, so there's no script. And QVC is, as you know, but maybe not everyone knows, it's a live television channel to broadcast to 100 million homes, and you have to, you're measured in dollars per minute, and so their airtime, it's not like a store where you walk in and you can see thousands of products. Only one product can be live on the air at that moment. So you're not just competing with beauty brands, you're competing with Apple iPhone and Dyson vacuum and Vitamix, all the stuff to hit a certain sales. So we got one shot and 10 minutes. And it was a consignment deal. So what that meant was we had to manufacture all the product, pay for it, et cetera, get it all shipped in there.
Yeah, they don't buy any of it.
No, not in beauty at the time. And then whatever, and then if it didn't sell, we would take it all back without being paid, go out of business. And at the time we were doing just, as 2 to 3 orders a day on our website. And what I learned was we'd have to sell over 6,000 units of our product in a 10-minute window to hit their sales goal or not come back. And so Paulo and I together, and Paulo, which is why I say his name, applied for 22 SBA loans and got rejected. It was the 23rd one in California, actually, that gave us an SBA loan just to cover the cost of the inventory for this one shot on QVC. So you should never accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose. But at this point, 3 years in, it was like...
It's like make it or break it.
Make it or break it.
We're going all in, or we're dying on the sword.
Exactly. And so we said yes and did everything. We hired third-party consultants. And this is where everything I believed in was put on the line. And they're awesome and they help a lot of people, right? So they help people sell in QVC and retail stores.
They gave you a
They're
different
amazing.
strategy that wasn't what you wanted to do, probably.
Right, exactly. They
They're
all
like, this
said,
is what you need,
this
and you
is
need
what
this
you need
perfect
to do.
model, and they need to be speaking this way, they need to look a certain way.
Because that's what had always been done, and that's what had always worked. And so they wanted the best for me. Like, they were smart and wanted me to win. And they're like, okay, here's what you need to do. You know, use models with perfect skin, all this. And I would say, okay, but like, that's not why I created this. And what if and this was pre-YouTube exploding. So I'm like, what if I go on air and just take my makeup off, like on live TV, and show my rosacea, like, and what if I'm gonna put models that all different ages and sizes, skin challenges, skin tones, everything. And they were mortified. Like, they're like,
no, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah, and
you're gonna lose it all. Yeah.
And I would say, okay, but if I'm sitting at home and I'm watching and I don't see someone that looks like me, how do I know the product is going to work for me? And but it's really hard when your gut is telling you one thing, experts are telling you another. It's like I couldn't try it both ways. So I flew out to QVC a week before our airing, our one shot, and this might sound crazy to you, but I got a rental car. I sat all alone in the QVC parking lot for a week, every day, just like watching the front door of the building, knowing the next time I go in, like, I'm either going to walk out with out of business or with, and I sat there and I prayed and I cried, and it felt really heavy, to be honest, because I didn't.
It's a big moment.
A big moment, because it was like, okay, I'm not nervous for TV, but it was like it felt like everything was on the line, and I tried to imagine who my customer was, who was watching it, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, all these things. I remember at one point channeling Oprah. I was like, okay, I remember this time when Oprah was obsessed with the color purple. She told the story on her show, and she wanted it so bad that it consumed her, and she ran around a track and just saying, I surrender all, and asked God to take it from her, because she just couldn't carry it herself. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try that. So I sat in the car, like, literally singing I Surrender All and crying. I also was imagining, you might do this, I was imagining, like, okay, Olympians, I think that they imagine, like, what happened. Yeah. And so I was visualizing the sold out sign coming up across the screen. I was, all those things. I was sitting in the car just doing everything that I could. And I also just had this moment where I imagined this woman sitting at home, and if I was going to be blessed enough for her to turn her TV on for 5 seconds, like, what did I want to stand for, right? It was like, okay, if she's going to give me her precious time, even if she buys nothing, I'd rather her look at the TV and see me showing real women and calling them beautiful and meaning it, because you can't fake authenticity, meaning it. And I'd rather have her for a moment feel like she's seen and like she matters and sell nothing than stand for nothing and sell a shitload of product and hit a sales goal. And so it was this moment where I just kind of knew. But sometimes we know what the right thing is, but it's also the hard thing, and it's scary.
It's like being in the wrong relationship and your gut's telling you get out, but everyone's like, oh, but they look great on paper, or
and my parents are happy, or this or that.
And you're like, but I'm torn.
Yes. I feel like everything comes down to our knowing and trusting it in life. And so many people are like, oh, how'd you sell your business for whatever, $1 billion? Like, oh no, that's not the victory. The victory is if we're trusting ourselves and our knowing and where we're supposed to be on our journey. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the victory. And it's like every time I don't do that, that's when I make big mistakes. And when I look back, and that's when I stayed in wrong relationships. That's when I kept employees on too long. That's when all those things. So I'm walking in the QC building and I go into the studio, and there's cameras like we see right now. I know that the second the on-air light goes on, it's
go time.
Live. Yeah, go time.
Wow.
Live to 100 million homes, and there's this 10-minute clock. And here's what I learned right before, okay? I learned, you're not guaranteed 10 minutes.
Oh, if it's not selling at 5, see ya.
So exactly. So you might be a minute or two in, and if you're not in real time doing well, hitting the goals, it jumps. Like, your clock might go from 8 minutes, boom, you're down at 2 minutes, and you're like, if you try to sell, nothing sells. You know what I mean? And it's just
if
like
you're forcing it, then people can feel it.
you can feel it, and you cannot fake authenticity. That's the thing. So it was like, okay.
How do you get sales in 2 minutes if they're not seeing sales when you haven't even told the story of the product?
I know,
yet?
exactly. You have to be so just. I know. And so, and I had prepared so hard for this. Like
the consultants taught you how to pitch and how to position and tell a story within a certain time frame and everything.
Yeah, and I literally thought, I walked in there thinking, okay, here's what I'm going to say off the top. Here's how I'm going to do this. And I didn't listen to consultants in terms of models. I'm like, I'm going to show real women all those things. But I'm like, here's how I'm going to do this demonstration on my wrist, all the stuff I had planned out. And then I did my host meeting a few minutes before the show, and she thanked me for my ideas and said, okay, but here's what we're gonna do. So literally scrapped everything.
So we're not doing that.
Nope. And I had, in that moment, I had to trust her, but I also had to just, like, I know, but they're so good. Oh,
they're pros.
They're such pros. Yeah, they know.
So you had a co-host with you.
Yeah, the QVC host, and then I'm there with the product. Yeah, like the entrepreneur, the founder, and she was amazing and all that. And but at that moment, like I remember the 10-minute clock, and I remember it was like 9:59, 9:58, and I remember like feeling my heart racing.
This is it.
Yeah, and it's so gross, but I remember like sweat. Yeah. I remember feeling sweat. And you would talk about how much we love Sarah Blakely. I was wearing 2 pairs of Spanx, and I remember feeling the sweat like dripping. I was like, okay, these Spanx are going to save me because it's not going to come through my dress. But then I also remember thinking, like, I have to not make this about me or I'm done. It's like, okay, this is about how do I want to shift culture and beauty? Who is that woman watching? Like, if she's going to bless me with her time, how am I going to show up for her? And I remember this moment where my bare face came up on national TV, and then I remember walking to the models, and I was shaking like a leaf. So I had planned this demonstration.
Just like 100 times in the mirror.
Yes, in
this
the
is the way it's gonna
mirror.
look. I'm gonna wipe this thing off. I'm gonna put this on. I'm gonna smile. Yeah.
Yes, and it was so good in my bathroom mirror. And then I'm trying to do this on national television, and this is my hand, literally. And the host grabs it, and she's like, "Thank you, sugar." And she took over, and we walked to all the models, and then I remember toward the very end of, I think it was like a minute left, and she's like, the deep shade is sold out, or the tan shade's almost gone, something like that.
Like, what?
Yeah, and I was like, and then I remember at the 10-minute mark, the sold out sign came up across the screen, just like I had envisioned it in the car, in the parking lot. The sold out sign came up. I started crying.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and they cut, and I see Paulo my husband, coming running through the double doors at the studio, and I'm like sobbing loose. I'm like, real women have spoken. And he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And it was just like, and I was just like, ah. And that one airing turned into 5 that year, and then 101 the next year, and then we did
100?
And we did over 250 live shows a year for
crazy.
8 years. Yeah, so I did over 1,000 live QVC shows myself, but we also built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history, and it is right now. At this moment that you and I are talking, it's right now still largest beauty brand in QVC's history. And I only share that because it was 3 years of them saying, no, you're not the right fit, all those things, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, like, nobody can tell you you're not the right fit.
Yeah, and you also got to know the timing of, maybe if you'd done it 3 years earlier, you wouldn't have been ready.
Oh, totally.
Maybe if you're pitching it, you would have bombed, and you would have never had another chance. You never would have had another chance, and you would have been done. So sometimes the delayed of people saying no is good for you to figure out, okay, how can I become better? How can I be prepared? How can I sell more? How can I do these other things? So that's what I think we got to think about as well is, how are we going to set ourselves up for something when someone says no?
Yeah, and to not be afraid of it.
Exactly.
I mean, to not be afraid of rejection and not be afraid of doing it, imperfectly, any of that stuff. It's so important. Oh my gosh, if I ever got afraid of it, never was easy, but if I ever got afraid of rejection, I would have been done. Like, done. Would have never hopefully had, I hope I had an impact on the beauty industry. That would have never happened. I would have never built $1 billion business. You know what I mean? I think it's huge. And I think it comes down to this, is like just really trusting your knowing. You know what I mean? Every time somebody hurt me or said no or whatever, I would go back and be like, okay, another expert said no. Like, am I wrong? Is my gut wrong? Right? But every time I would get still and just know. And, for me, it's how I've never heard God talk to me, but like I feel for me, it's faith is part of that. I hear it through my intuition. For other people, it's the universe. Like it's everything. And I just think, you mentioned relationships. I think that we all know if we're in the right relationship. Like
in our gut,
we know. And I mean, I don't think I have a single girlfriend in my life, including myself, who hasn't gone through a relationship where he's like sketchy, and you're like, oh, maybe his phone did break for 3 days. Maybe, right? It didn't break.
Right.
We all know. And I just think that we start to turn up the volume on all this noise in our life, how busy we are, other people's opinions, what our inner circle says, all the things, and we have the mute button on our own gut, and it goes on for so long that we start to not learn how to hear it. And so, for me, and it's not, and I believe everyone has a knowing, and I believe it's always right. And I think that like learning how to listen to it, how to trust it is a journey. It's a process.
I'm curious about...
do you do that in life though? Like with people or friendships? Do you feel a knowing?
No, I feel it, yeah.
You feel it,
it's
right?
It's usually pretty quick for me. It's an intuition. But I also research people pretty extensively. And I look at everything. I look at things that they don't even think I might be looking at. And I learn a lot about people by doing research. So before I even speak to them, I'll kind of get a gut instinct. And then they really need to show me, whether convince me that I'm right or convincing me that I'm wrong within connecting with them. And sometimes I've been wrong, very few, maybe 2 or 3 times out of thousands of people, where I was like, oh, the things I saw about them, I prejudged them in a way that wasn't accurate. And I took responsibility for that. But most of the time you can get a sense from people, whether you watch a couple videos or just see what they're sharing or how they communicate. So
it's funny, I just get a feeling.
Yeah,
Because
me too.
I've met so many people that are amazing on video. And then I just get a feeling and I'm like, okay, and
yeah. Do I want them in my life that much? Yeah.
Well, and I just think that, listen, I think every single one of us, has miscalculations and misjudgments and makes mistakes and all that. And I don't believe we're our mistakes. I believe we're our intentions, And
Absolutely. We can shift our intentions in any moment.
Yeah.
I wrote a whole chapter once called The Power of You Can't, because you can't, or rejection can be cumulative, where you go, hey, I had 100 no's. I don't have a good brand here. Let me go back to what I was doing. Simultaneously, though, that with a little proof, you realize the more no's is just the build to the yes. Like it's either your fuel or your anchor, right? And,
Yes.
and I love how you're sharing that. And I want everybody to really think through that. You can take rejection. I mean, the worst part is sometimes we take advice about dating or our relationship from our single friend, or money advice from our broke friend, and we let it sink in. And Jamie, you said it so right. Like we go back to them 5 or 10 times trying to resell them, while simultaneously we're just building more self-doubt for ourselves, because each time you're not breaking through. It doesn't mean your idea is not great. It means they're not qualified, or they don't have the vision, or they tried something and failed. And one more thing I want to share, on that I had a dear friend who has passed. He was born with a rare disease. They told his parents he had a couple of weeks to live, and he lived till 42. And had a freak accident in his wheelchair. It's the only reason he's not with us. His name is Sean Stevenson. He was 3 foot tall. He broke 280 bones in his body and was the most confident, dynamic, amazing man you'd ever meet. Like just when he walked in a room, as he said, you guys aren't as lucky as me. When I walk in a room, you might have a couple people look. He goes, I get everybody looking at me. Right? Like that's the kind of man he was, right? Yeah. He's like, so don't be jealous. They're all going to look at me. Don't be jealous. And he'd walk in a room and go, hey, everybody. Hi, I know, right? That's what kind of guy he was. But he was also a psychologist and obsessed on helping relieve people of suffering. And I just want to share one thing that came to mind when you were talking. He said, so many times in life, we don't realize when we have a dream, a goal, a desire, a passion, if the people around us that we spend too much time with don't support us, we feel bad for burning our light so bright. So what we do is we turn it down. And I just, when he said that, I'm like, wow. He said, do not turn your light down. Burn so bright that eventually they'll come to the light. And if they don't, that's okay. They have their own journey. And it just made
Yeah.
me think of that. Like, don't dare turn down your glow for someone else.
Yeah. And so many times people feel like they need to listen because it's their partner or their family or their close friends. They've been friends for 20 years. And so many people, they love, like, and here's the thing, a lot of people around you, they love you, they want the best for you, they're giving you their best advice, that they don't believe in your dream. They're giving,
Yeah.
like, they care about you, they have good hearts, but like they only see things through their own lens of experience and
Yep.
limitations, and they're doing the best they can. And it's hard sometimes to go, okay, I need to love all of them from a new boundary, a new distance, and I'm going to talk with them about The Bachelor tonight, or I'm going to talk about the weather or what we're going to cook for dinner Friday. But like, I'm going to talk to these other people. I'm going to bring new people in my circle that when I want to dream big and I want to like get the right kind of feedback, even when it's critical, the right kind of feedback, because people really get it, that, you know, that's when you turn the volume up on those people. And then that's when you still love all the people that you love, but like, exactly, because energy is contagious, right? So
Absolutely.
exactly what you just said. If somebody, the more you have that around you, not only the more you dim your light, but I feel like subconsciously as human beings, we start to dim our own light also to have love and acceptance around us and to match everyone else's energy, and we lower our vibration. It's contagious. So just being mindful of that is so powerful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of your life, if we get the chance to sit down with our maker, whoever you believe your maker is, would you want to say, you know, thank you for putting me on this earth. Thank you for making me a human. You know, I lived a good life. I was going to do more, but you know, my husband, my friend, my mom, my sister, my friend, they thought I was kind of crazy with my dreams, and I didn't want to make them feel bad. So, you know, I lived a good life, and I had some pretty cool accomplishments. Like, I don't think we want that. I think that would be a moment as it was coming out of your mouth. You'd be like, could I get it? Could I go do a do-over, please? Give me one more shot. I want to go. Like, I think, I think more than anything, we would love to be able to say, hey, you know, my friends weren't as crazy and didn't see the potential I had in me, and that was okay for them, but I went for it anyway. I think we'd be okay, even more so than a good life, to say my life was kind of a roller coaster, but I went for it. I found my dreams. I overcame the imposter syndrome. I overcame rejection. I went for it. And I don't think you can end that story if you get up, you know, you say, if you fail once, what do you do? Try again. If you fail another 100 times, what do? You try 100 different other ways to overcome it. I don't think you can have that conversation without saying, and finally, I had the breakthrough and I got to lean into this full potential and I got to live a more fulfilled life. And I feel like I squeezed all the juice out of life. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think of those crazy things in my life when I'm going to let someone's opinion stop me or a no stop me. I'm like, what am I going to say to God when I'm sitting next to him, that I wasted this life he gave me? Hell no.
Your journey of like going from not believing in yourself to believing in yourself and believing you're enough, how was it a decision that you made, or was it really just this, you know, process of basically your entire life up until then?
Yeah, it's been so many lessons along the way and so many setbacks that I later realized were setups. So many things I did wrong, and then really looking back at what were those things I did right? Looking back at when I made decisions where I listened to other people's opinions or the experts instead of actually listening to my own gut. Oh, those were the things I did wrong. When I look back at what happened, right? And it's been building on all of these things. And so, you know, in the book, I share so many stories, and it's wild because like literally 95% of the book is stuff I've never shared before, ever. And I had this realization, that a really big realization, that, you know, because I get DMs on Instagram every single day from so many girls and women and people who say like, oh, wow, you started with nothing and built a $1 billion business from your living room. Like, did you just get lucky? Or was like, you know, did someone give you a big break? Or like, did you, right? All those things. And I kind of had this realization, oh, when you just see the highlight reel or you just read the headlines, it makes it seem like, oh, maybe she just got lucky, or she's, you know, whatever. And it's like, you know what? I felt this strong calling on my heart that if I could pour everything I've learned into how you do that, like how did I do that, into one book, that would be of service to other people, right? And so, like, for example, I'm donating 100% of the proceeds, by the way, every penny from the book. I'm literally purely just doing it for exactly the question you just asked, which is to help every other person out there learn to believe that stepping into all of who they're born to be is possible, right? The thing, when I look back on all of the lessons from going through years of hearing no, because I created a company called It Cosmetics in my living room, where I started with an idea and close to no money, and I just thought once we created an amazing product that worked, I thought it would just do well, right? And then I started this journey of every beauty retailer saying no, every department store, every QVC, everybody saying no, you're not the right fit. We don't think your positioning is right. We don't think you're right for the beauty industry, all those things. And when I look back and I went through 3 years of hearing no's from everybody, and got down to under $1,000 in my bank account, which was our personal and business bank account, and didn't know how I was going to make it. And when I look back on all of the journey, like, there's so many lessons I learned along the way, but one of the biggest ones, and really a huge through line in this whole book, is that, like, yeah, I worked really, really hard, and I didn't give up. And not giving up every time you get knocked down, every time you get a setback, that's so important, because at the end of the day, a lot of people never realize their dreams because they actually just quit or they give up, or they let their own self-doubt talk them out of it. So I didn't give up, and I worked really, really hard, but like, how I actually built a $1 billion business from my living room was like the most important thing I did when I look back at everything, was like, I made the decision to believe that I could. And when I try to dissect how did I do that, that's really why I wrote this book, is sharing every single lesson on how do you actually truly peel back the layers on your why, not just do a why. Because that's the other thing too. A lot of people, when they might keep a goal journal, or they might write out their goals, and then a lot of people will go another step, right? And they'll talk about their why, like, I'm doing this for, because I want to one day buy a house, or I want to, all these things, or do something for my kids, or pay for their college, or pay off my student loans, whatever it is. And what I've seen over the years is that those whys, they sound really good. And when you tell them to other people, they like sound great. But if it's not deep, 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 deep to your core, you're going to quit. It's not going to be strong enough for you to keep going when you face all these setbacks. And so one of the things I talk about in the book was like, because I've done a ton of things wrong. And I share those too. I've never shared this stuff before. I'm actually freaking out, to be honest, but I just know it's not about me. It's going to be of service to so many people to know they're not alone in their setbacks and in their hard times, and in how to handle them. But in the book, I talk about, like, I did a ton of things wrong, but one of the things I did right was, early on in my journey, I knew, okay, I'm creating makeup products. And of course, I want them to work for me and my rosacea, because nothing else will. And of course, I want to help other people. And those are great whys, but they weren't deep, like deep, deep, deep enough. And what I realized is, in my whole childhood, all growing up, I only saw images of beauty in magazines and on TV commercials. And they were never real, right? They're always overly photoshopped. And I never saw anyone that looked like me, or had any skin challenges, and I realized in the development of this company, while I was trying to create a product that actually worked, and when I realized why didn't any other product work, and then I realized, oh wait, I don't even know if the models are actually wearing the product they're advertising, all those things, I realized, okay, not only do I want to create a company that has great products, but I want to start using models that are every age, every size, every skin tone, every skin challenge. And I want to authentically define them as beautiful and mean it, and all those things. And I had this realization on the why beneath the why early on, that, like, for me, it was like, oh, I want to shift culture and beauty. And I want to do this for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every grown woman who still does. And that why was so deep for me, because of my whole childhood realizing I'd see these images and I'd want to look like them. I'd aspire to look like them. And at the same time, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And so this deep why was so important. I talk about like how to do that in the book for yourself, for whatever your dream is. Because some people out there, they're like, oh my gosh, I really just want to dance and I want to start painting again, or I want to launch a business, or I want to become a pastor, or I want to start a blog, right? Like we all have these things. And I feel like we end up, right? Because here's the big thing. This is the big thing that, and I love just sharing this process in the book too, but so many of us know we have this calling on our heart, or this like, kind of inkling where we want to step out and do something, but like it's way more comfortable in our comfort zone. And I feel like when we stay in our comfort zone, it comes at the price of chipping away at our soul. That's the first thing. And when we have a gut feeling, intuition, like we're made for more, like we have gifts or talents or ambitions to offer the world. One hard part I've seen and experienced personally too is sometimes the people around us, even when they're great people, whether they're family or friends or whatever, and they love us dearly, they don't have that same inkling. like they don't get it. They're super happy in their comfort zone. And what happens to so many people is we have the volume turned up on listening to everyone around us. And then we have the self-doubt in our heads of, oh, well, maybe I'm not qualified, or maybe I don't have what it takes, or maybe I don't, other people are way more advanced artists than I am, or whatever, that inner critic. So we start to turn up the volume on our own self-doubt. We start to listen to all the opinions of everyone else around us. And before we know it, we talk ourselves out of our own truth. And this happens to so many people. And in the book, Believe It, like a big part of why I did it too is like, I talk about the journey of how to love the circle around you, but how to turn down the volume on the stuff that's not for you. And that goes against the calling of who you are and who you're created to be. And how do you add other people around you and turn the volume up on them? And even more than that is the self-doubt and everything that we all experience in our own heads, right? And I just feel like that self-doubt sometimes in our own heads is a bigger opposition against us than the people out there rejecting us or saying no, or saying you're not the right fit for us, or whatever it might be, right? And so this book talks so much. I share so much about how to break through that noise of self-doubt, and learn to actually hear your own intuition and learn to trust yourself, right? Because so many people don't even know how to tune in and listen to their own intuition. Maybe they haven't even heard it ever or in a long time, because everything around us is so much noise, from other people's opinions to people not believing in us and us getting no's and rejected, to then the self-doubt in our own head. It's a lot. And I think the journey of learning how to go from not trusting yourself to truly trusting yourself is huge. And it's so many people, it's their journey they're on right now as well. So this book is definitely for them.
It's crazy what you're talking about right now, even just, loving the people around you, but maybe turning down some voices or working through self-doubt. I was actually talking to my pastor this morning, and we were just having this conversation, and she was just saying, a lot of us have very unique calls on our life. Like a lot more of us have those than we realize. They either just don't realize them, or they don't have, the courage or the faith to kind of walk that out. And we were talking, and I was like, it's not my job to get these people to understand me. Like it's my job to follow what I feel as though like God has put on my heart, or what I feel as though is like inside of me. And that's something that I feel like has been a constant battle, not even necessarily with other people, but even with myself sometimes, because something specifically that I'm even trying to work on now is believing like the best is yet to come, and like being one of those people who believes like, oh, I am so excited for the future. I know what God has for me. I know it's going to be even better than what I've seen. And maybe it's just the year that we've been in, or a lot of other life circumstances, but that's something that I'm working on for myself. And it's not about like being this positive person necessarily, but it's a deep core belief, not only in myself, but that there is so much good to come. And obviously we're promised trials, like that stuff will always happen. But I feel like when you're in the middle, like we talk about when you are talking about the difference between the headlines versus the reality, I feel as though that's where I feel like I'm kind of at right now, and where so many people listening to this are. How do you like navigate the in between? And not that it ever necessarily stops, but when you feel like you're in the middle and you see more in your head than you see that's like in front of you.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I love that you talk so openly about your faith, right? And all of this, because for me, that has been like the espresso in my latte in life. You know what I mean? In such a big way. So a couple things. I think that, and I have known this, but sometimes we know something, and until we actually truly experience it and look back, then we're like, we go from like believing it to like being certain of it, right? And in my journey, the thing that I know for sure, I know this for sure, is that every setback we experience is God's way of setting us up. Every setback is a setup for all that is to come. And I believe that the things we go through, even periods like right now that you're describing of feeling like you're in the middle and you're trying so hard to anticipate and believe that the best is yet to come. Even this season, right, I believe is a setup for everything that is to come. And I believe that in all my heart. And when I look back at it, I have learned every setback and every hard season and every season that was just okay was a way of actually making me strong enough to be able to handle the weight of the big God-sized dreams when they come true. Because God-sized dreams and stepping into our calling and stepping into who we were created to be, especially those of us that know in our heart we're meant for more, we're meant to give more, serve more, create more, love more, inspire more, right? Be of service more. I believe when you're at service at the highest capacity, that it's not about you, it's about how has everything you've walked through and been through actually helping someone else believe it's possible to get through it, believe it's possible to step into all of who they are. And we can't do that unless we've gone through it all as well. And so I believe our setbacks are God's setups for everything that's to come. And it doesn't mean they're fun, and it doesn't mean they're easy. When I look back at going through like the 3 years of rejection, or I look back at, painful moments, right? There was a moment where, the story when, we were a couple years into the business, I didn't know how we were going to make it. And we had a really big investor interested in our company. And I thought like, oh my gosh, he's going to change my life, because he had invested in all these consumer product companies that we all buy at the grocery store. And he'd his private equity company had invested in a lot of them when they're super small and made them huge brand names, household names. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we went through all these meetings, and at the very end, and I thought like, oh, if he invests in us, then we're not going to go bankrupt. And maybe he can help us get into all these stores like Sephora and Ulta and department stores who are all saying no to me. I thought it was the biggest, like most exciting thing ever. And at the end, we flew out for the final meeting, and he was standing 3 feet from me, and my husband was right next to me. And he said, we're going to, I wanted to share with you in person that we're so grateful for your time. We're excited for all you're building, but we're going to pass on investing in It Cosmetics. It's a no. And I remember saying, okay, can you give me some feedback? Like, can you share why? Because I always think feedback's a gift, usually. And he said, do you want me to be honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you, with your body and your weight. And when he said my body and my weight, I remember this moment where I was looking at him, and it's almost like I was watching his lips move in slow motion as these words were coming out. And I felt my whole body flood with like this lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt. And it was this moment where it's like I was staring my own fear like straight in the eye, and I knew I had to keep my faith bigger than it. I also knew in that moment, deep down inside, I had this feeling, and this is why it's so important that we do the work of learning to listen to our gut and listen and learning to trust ourselves. Because in that moment, I had no proof around me that this company would ever grow or become successful. And then I have this person in front of me that I saw as a visionary. I saw as someone who truly created stellar brands. And he's telling me, no one will buy makeup from someone who looks like me, my body and my weight. And I had this feeling deep down inside my gut in that moment that he's wrong. And I also knew if I was ever going to prove it, I would have to figure out how to believe that for myself. And the other thing is, in that moment, I didn't even get mad at him. Of course it hurt me, and I had to learn, we talk about volume. I had to learn how to turn down the volume on those words from being on the repeat button in my head over and over and over for years. But I also knew in that moment, like, he's passing on investing in my company because the sole reason I want to create this company, he's been impacted by the beauty industry his entire life. And he's learned, just like we've all have been taught, you have to look a certain way to sell something, right? And so he was just, I don't want to say a victim, but like a byproduct of what he's seen his whole life on television and in magazines. So it fueled me. And this is part of why mindset is so important, and why not slipping into that like woe is me victim kind of mindset. It was like, oh no, you know what? This is a gift. This is a setback right now. It really sucks. Like, God, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. I don't know how I'm going to keep the lights on. Like, I started going to the Costco. I don't know if you have a Costco by you, but the Costco outdoor food stand where you get the $1 hot dogs. Yep. I was like, okay, God, I'm doing that. And at least they taste good. And I was like, how am I going to keep this business alive? That setback was a setup, because it fueled me this deep, deep, deep why of like, oh, even this dude is like this dude in a business suit who has probably never bought a beauty product in his life is impacted the same way women are by the industry. And it fueled me. And so I believe, and really honestly, the reason I wrote this book, and like I'm literally donating 100% of the proceeds of the book. The reason I wrote this book is because I believe everything we've gone through, especially once we're through a lot of it, we learn like, oh wow, the next level of success is that it's not about us. Like, how can my story, your story, everyone who's listening's story actually be of service to other people when we actually have the courage to share it? And for me, that's where I get my greatest joy. And it's like the lessons and the stories in this book, if this can save other people from making a lot of the mistakes I made, and save them at least some nights of crying themselves to sleep at night, but more importantly, help them on their journey of like believing themselves, trusting themselves, like knowing they're enough, and just deciding it's possible to step in to who they were born to be. Like, to me, that's everything. And so the season you're going through right now, okay, don't even get me started right now on your calling, because first of all, you are magic. And so many people listening right now will agree with me. And everything you're going through right now is, of course, part of your own journey. But we all have the blessing of being able to listen to you and then actually have it fill us up and have us, all of us together, feel less alone when we're going through the same things. Do you know what I mean? And so even if it's hard right now or uncertain right now, or so many people, I mean, this year has been packed with uncertainty, right? More than so many people have ever experienced. And I would never downplay how hard it's been on so many people ever. I would never wish it on people ever. What I know through so many, and this book is so many personal hardships too, right? From adoption, surprise, you're adopted in your 20s. I found out in my 20s. to rejection, to like all of these things personally, right? I just think that they're all part of our journey to make us strong enough to be able to carry the weight of our calling when we step into it.
Thank you. Something I love so much about you is how you are so willing to share and to open up. And it's almost like you're this open book and you're trying to give value, and you do give value to pretty much every single person who I'm sure like even comes across.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.